Oi maamme, Suomi synnyinmaa, soi sana kultainen. Ei laaksoa, ei kukkulaa, ei vettä rantaa rakkaampaa kuin kotimaa, tää pohjoinen maa kallis isien. I am driven by my longing, and my understanding urges that I should commence my singing and begin my recitation. I will sing the people's legends and the ballads of the nation. To my mouth the words are flowing, and the words are gently falling, quickly as my tongue can shape them, and between my teeth emerging. The Finnish pioneers arrived in America over 300 years ago, forming a colony along the shores of the Delaware River during the years from 1638 to 1654. One of these settlements was on the present site of Philadelphia and was called Sauna, a reminder that the Finns have always built saunas first and more spacious homes later. Other Finnish settlements called Upland and Finland were located near what is now Chester, Pennsylvania. More Finns settled in New Jersey at Finns Point. Until 1864, more Finns trickled into America, many of these seamen who landed at the ports of Baltimore or Boston. In 1808, as a consequence of the Napoleonic Wars, Finland, until then a part of Sweden, was separated and came under Russian rule. Alaska at this time also belonged to Russia, and from 1830 until 1840, a considerable number of Finns emigrated to Alaska. When Alaska was sold to the United States in 1867, many Finns stayed on. These Finns and their descendants played an important part in the development of the Alaska Territory. The principal Finnish immigration to America began in 1864, precipitated by famine and political unrest. Finns came seeking a better life and with dreams of owning their own land. The rapid industrialization of the United States in the late 19th century also produced a great demand for their labor. In Finland, word of mouth brought talk of the riches in America and encouraged American fever. One newcomer put it this way.
It was almost an unwritten law that when a man reached the age of 18, it was time for him to go to America.
By 1888, every sixth person in one Finnish community had left for the United States. Unmarried men left first, followed by young women who came to work as domestics or to marry Finnish men already here. Finally came the families. In 1883, the Finnish steamship line was organized, and Finns could now sail directly from the port of Hanko to Hull in England, where they boarded trains for Liverpool or Southampton and transferred to the steamers bound for ports in Boston and New York.
You know, first the boats went from Finland, you know. They were lousy, honestly. They had bunk beds in big room, and all the people was in that big room, and I was throwing up, you know, seasickness. And didn't give us anything but fish and potatoes to eat. That's all we got. And then we come to Liverpool. First we come to Hull, and then we come to Liverpool. And in Liverpool they had a big open place. They had sawdust on the floor, and they just gave us you know, cold cuts. And then we had to stay in the hotel, the Gonard Hotel there in Liverpool, 4 days to wait for the boat to come to bring us over here. And well, it was better on that Ivernia, but some people were so hungry, so when the second table come, they come and stole the food from the second table too. They were so hungry. And you know, they had those big those fishes, big barrel of fish there, salt fish up, and the Finnish people, they opened those things and they ate those silly from there. So it was fun anyway. When you're young, you're not scared of anything. No.
Another strong push for immigration to America was the Russification period beginning in 1898 and the ensuing illegal conscriptions and political persecutions. The old Finnish saying, "Swedes we are not, Russians we do not want to become, hence we must be Finns," was changed to, "We intend to become neither Swedes nor Russians, but Americans in all seriousness." Young men were encouraged.
Boys, if you're ordered east, go west.
I'm Frank Freiberg. I was born in Westminster, and my parents came to Westminster in 1906. My father originally came to Worcester in 1905. He was a seaman. He had been to sea a number of years. He was a mate on a ship at the time he left Finland, but he only had 1 more year to go for his captain's papers. However, 2 factors got him to come to the United States. One, the most important, was the fact that the streets of the United States were lined with gold. And the second, which is the final trigger, was the fact that he and 4 of his friends were going to be inducted into the Russian army for the Russo-Japanese War.
Nearly 360,000 Finns came to America between 1864 and 1920 in search for the streets of gold. A Finnish immigrant ballad sums it up. "I am going to America, everyone is on his way. The American shores are sanded with gold, they say. I'll embark from Hankoniemi on a small boat and go, 'cause Finland can't support the children of her poor." Once in America, Finns scattered in all directions: Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and New England. These areas had plentiful jobs and in climate resembled the old country. Finns worked in copper and iron mines, lumber camps, and agriculture. They were described as having all the right qualifications for these hard jobs: stiff-necked, having the strength of a bear, the endurance of a mule, and disciplined in the old country to perform even the most dismal jobs. The factories and mills of New England, including Fitchburg, Worcester, Maynard, and Gardner, were also strong magnets for the Finnish immigrant. By 1877, Fitchburg was known to have 70 Finns, and more were arriving with great regularity. The greatest influx of new Finnish immigrants occurred between 1890 and 1910.
My name is Hilja Luukkonen, and I came here in 1913. I was 17 then, and now I'm 87 years old. And I came here because I was looking for better living. We had a big family in my family, 11 of children, and it was too much for one man to take care of. I thought that was my own idea. And I came here and I've been very happy, and I've been succeeding enough to win what I was looking for.
The Finns of Fitchburg in the 1880s worked in the paper pulp factory of Alex Rosnell, also a Finn, in the textile mills or in the quarries on Rollstone Hill. Women, in addition to working the mills, also became domestics. By the turn of the century, several thousand Finns had settled in Fitchburg. Most were young and unskilled, coming from the rural sections of Finland. Even the few skilled workers were handicapped in getting good jobs by their inability to understand or speak English. Their main assets at the time were their strong bodies and willingness to do hard manual work. Poor and separated from the Fitchburg community by the language barrier, early Finnish settlers sought solace in settling close to one another in the Mechanic, High, and Elm Street area, as well as the Rollstone Hill area. By 1899, there were at least 20 Finnish homeowners. When many Finns arrived, their first home was a boarding house. As they arrived at the train station, the hack drivers would take them to the boarding house as if it were their home. A history of the time describes the boarding house experience.
The boarding house was a social institution, a meeting place where they could eat old country foods in the quantity to which they were accustomed, and where they saw friends with whom they could converse in their common language. The boarding house was a haven for the lonely and weary in a strange land.
But despite hardships, the life of Fitchburg Finns was rich and textured.
And I think our home life was typical, probably. Mother was the one who set the tone for the house. She was very fair, she was very clean, she was very industrious, and our father worked very hard. He left in the morning before we were up, and he came home 6 o'clock for supper. And we all went to the same grammar school and high school. The 6 of us all graduated from high school, and 3 of us went beyond that.
I was born in Clinton, but came here to Fitchburg because at that time they had no doctors delivering babies, or maybe they did, but these Finnish people just relied on their midwife. So most of the babies from all around Fitchburg were born right here from the 3-4 Finnish midwives that they had. I remember my dad working at a lumber camp, and he said it was really terrible. Many times he had to grit his teeth and say, well, I'm not going back to Finland, and how proud he was after to think back on those days. And my mother worked in a weaving mill right here in Fitchburg in Park Hill, and they were long hours. They walked back and forth to work, and they made a living for their children, knowing that the children would have a better opportunity than they had.
Oh, the sauna was pretty good. The kids would go in there and get washed first, and then the parents would go. We'd go in the sauna, you know, and we'd have a bottle of soda. That was the best part of the sauna. But it was that way with everybody.
And one of the things I remember as a youngster very, very vividly is on Sunday afternoons we used to take a walk with father, mother, and sister up to Pearl Hill Road to the Proctor Farm. a friend of the family had charge of the farm for the Proctors. And at the corner of Mechanic Street, Fisher Road, and Ringe Road, the John Fitch had been built at that time. It was kind of brushed over. And they had a big sign on the corner, klaxon, danger. And I always thought that was a wild animal.
Immigrant Finns soon realized that one way of easing the difficulties of life in America was to band together. Collective action would change the new country into the land they had dreamed of. Leisure time, they reasoned, should be used for good purpose, to educate themselves and their children, and to keep Finnish culture alive. Wherever 3 or 4 Finns gathered, an organization was sure to be born. Paula Robbins, a Finnish scholar, has said, "Finns always start clubs and societies. It's part of the national psyche." Fitchburg was no exception, and almost every member of the Finnish community belonged to one or more organizations, such as Saima, Rapers, the Temperance Society, the Knights and Ladies of Kaliva, the Consumer and Producer Cooperatives, and, of course, the Church. The Finnish Labor Society, Saima, was organized on January 4, 1894, and incorporated on January 27, 1900. It was dedicated to the purpose of improving the lot of working men within democratic institutions, specifically to improve the spiritual and economic conditions of the Finns locally, to find work for its unemployed members, to take care of the sick, and to provide for the needy. The first meetings of Saima were held in the basement of the Lutheran Church on Mechanic Street. In 1906, the group built its own hall at Foster and Layton Streets, which served as its headquarters until 1957, when Saima Hall was sold. The offspring group of this society, the Finnish American Club of Saima, still owns Saima Park, which has served and still serves as the site of many Finnish cultural events. Saima was a powerful cultural and political organization. It served as a school for immigrants by its many activities, including discussions of politics, economics, and social questions. It also encouraged reading and maintained a large library of books. The hall served as a meeting place for what little leisure time the immigrants had after working a 12-hour day. Here they could find friends and participate in a wide range of activities, including dancing, singing, playing in bands and orchestras, taking part in sewing circles, or enjoying one of the numerous dramatic presentations. Saima's dramatic group for years presented a new play every week, including everything from comedy to Shakespeare. Visiting artists from Finland occasionally starred in some of these productions. Early in its history, Saima was associated with the Socialist Party. The early Socialists, affiliated with the American labor movement, sought to change the conditions of the working man. Their beliefs, radical in 1916, are commonplace today. The 8-hour day, workmen's compensation legislation, decent working conditions, unemployment insurance, old age pensions, and other labor reforms were advocated by them long before these reforms were adopted as a part of the law of the land. These early socialists were adamant believers in the democratic way of life and also were strongly anti-communist. The Fitchburg Sentinel of May 1916 describes one of their typical May Day parades.
This is International Labor Day and is celebrated quite generally in most European countries and in the United States by members of the Socialist Party and other radical organizations. Fitchburg's celebration was limited almost entirely to the members of the Finnish Socialist Club or Sima Society and their families, but there was a small number of Lithuanians and other socialists among them in a parade of 1,400 people with which the celebration began. This was followed by athletic contests, music and speeches at Sima Farm on Scott Road, and there will be a play and other exercises tonight in the Society Hall on Layton Street.
Sima played an important role in the growing needs of the Fitchburg community, and many important organizations were founded under its auspices. Raivaja, the Finnish language newspaper, grew to become the leading Finnish daily in the country. Today, it continues as a weekly publication. Irma Lane, currently co-editor of Raivaja, describes some of its history.
The paper started on January 31, 1905, when a group of men gathered in a restaurant on the Upper Common to discuss important social issues. They decided that they should have some means of getting these issues to the people of the community. Beginning the Raivaja newspaper fulfilled that need. Although other Finnish language newspapers existed, the views of Raivaja's founders were not represented adequately, and they wanted their own newspaper. The first editor was Taavi Tainio, and Raivaja was established as a democratic newspaper that would bring to Finnish-speaking people the important issues of the United States in their own native language. At the start of the newspaper, 1/5 of the Fitchburg population was Finnish, and the circulation of Raivaja grew rapidly. Even though Fitchburg had an English language newspaper, the Sentinel, Raivaja grew, and in 1917 it exceeded the Sentinel's circulation. The paper increased from 2,000 at the beginning to cover 10,000. The Raivaja had home delivery for many, many years. Many distinguished editors-in-chief have served the Raivaja over the years. Franz Syrjälä was with the paper for over 20 years. He was an editor and lecturer, a very high-caliber man. I came to work for the paper in 1948. George Mäkelä was the editor-in-chief then. He was very well known and liked. During this time, Oskari Tokoi was also an editor at Raivaja. He had been the first Prime Minister of Finland, but when the government changed, he was exiled from his country. However, later on his services were recognized, and he was greatly honored by the government. Henry Puranen was one of the most colorful and popular managing editors of the Raivaja. He was also one of the first few of his generation to participate in the community outside of the Finnish circle. For his work in aiding Finland during her wars with Russia, he received the knighthood of the White Rose from the government of Finland. During the 40s, we had 5 editors, and we had our own composing room with 8 compositors. Downstairs, we even had our own printing press. In addition to the paper, we printed books, the Fitchburg City Report, and other periodicals. Raivaja was big business back in 1948.
Several other Finnish language newspapers preceded the Raivaja. The first Finnish language newspaper published in Fitchburg was Totuus in 1896. Idän Uutinen followed later. And the Pohjan Tähti, established in 1902, was an important Finnish newspaper for many years. The Finnish people are well known for their physical fitness programs and athletic achievements, and it was only natural that athletics would become a part of their lives here in Fitchburg. Hence, shortly after the organization of Sima, the Rapus Athletic Club was established. When Raivaja purchased the old Fitchburg Athletic Club building in 1911, there was a ready-made gymnasium for Rapus on the top floor. Men, women, and children participated in the Rapus physical fitness programs, and the Raivaya building hummed with their activity for many, many years during winter, fall, and spring. In the summer, the physical program shifted to Sima Park, with its field, track, and swimming facilities. Rapist gym teams were particularly proficient in apparatus performances, tumbling and balancing acts. Rapist developed top basketball players and trackmen for the Fitchburg High School for many years. Of course, we are proud of our two Fitchburg Olympic participants, Erkki Koutanen, a member of the track team in 1948, and Arthur Longjo Jr. on two Olympic teams, a bicyclist in the Summer Olympics and a speed skater in the Winter Olympics. In 1982, the new Finnish Memorial Field at Sima Park was dedicated. This fine track and field facility, open for use by anyone, stands as an enduring symbol of the Finnish heritage. Sima was also a force in the formation of a strong cooperative movement. Saveli Syrjälä, the editor of various co-op publications, writes this about the philosophy of the cooperative movement.
A cooperative is more than a store or a business. It is part of a social movement, worldwide in scope, building toward a better world in which our economic life will be organized on use and service basis rather than on the profit motive. The cooperative aim is that all shall be able to enjoy the plenty which our modern machine age can produce.
The first successful Finnish cooperative was the Into Grocery Company, founded in 1910. Its success proved the viability of the cooperative principles. Each member, one vote, limited return on capital, savings return, unlimited membership, and cash business. By 1912, Into and Sima had agreed to cooperate. As cooperatives in the area proliferated, the Cooperative Society was formed in 1919 and included 9 cities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Because of its financial size, it was known as the $1 Million Cooperative, but it only lasted until the summer of 1921, when it was dissolved and control restored to local cooperatives. Emerging from the $1 Million experiment, the United Cooperative Society of Fitchburg began a period of steady growth and expansion. At its peak, the cooperative included a wide variety of successful businesses. Another important cooperative venture was the founding of a credit union. The Workers' Credit Union was organized at a time when credit unions were practically unheard of in this country, and came about because of a real necessity. John Suominen, business manager of the Raivaya, recognized the need for a credit union because he saw Raivaya getting too involved in banking. More money for stock was coming in than the publishing company could advantageously use, and the employees were getting into the habit of borrowing money from Raivaya. Also, many Finns were keeping their savings at home because they were reluctant to patronize the banks where their language was not spoken. A meeting was held at the Raivaya on April 8, 1914, and the Workers' Credit Union was born. Today, the credit union still serves the Fitchburg community. Now, the farmers in the area had long formed their own social groups and cooperated with each other in the way of borrowing and lending farm equipment. A group of Finnish blueberry growers got together in New Ipswich, New Hampshire in November 1927 and formed a cooperative to assure more profitable marketing of their berries. This was the start of the United Cooperative Farmers. Waino Perna, who managed the cooperative for many years, looks back and remembers.
The development of the co-op was definite, the answer to the problems of the Finnish farmers who had moved to the farms in the early 1920 period. It helped them financially in more ways than one, and also gave an opportunity to learn more about agricultural pursuits through the educational proceedings which the co-op was able to arrange in the various meetings throughout the 11 local organizations.
One of the oldest Finnish social organizations was the Temperance Society. The Fitchburg group was organized in 1889 and joined with the Lutheran Church and the Seymour Labor Society to buy a lot on Mechanic Street for the erection of a church. In 1900, the Lutheran Church was built with $1 a month donations from members. The downstairs quarters were allotted to the labor and temperance groups. Within a few years, the church congregation bought out the two societies' shares in the building. Eventually, the society built a hall on Grove Street, where the lonely and discouraged immigrant, far from a homeland and parents, could find a friendly hand at the society to help him avoid the pitfalls of the saloon. Dances and dramatic productions were popular social activities at the Temperance Hall for many years. Among the important organizations in the Finnish community was, and continues to be, the Lodge of the Knights and Ladies of Kaleva, founded in 1908. Kaleva's prime objectives are benevolence and compassion. From these objectives flow many social and cultural activities. Usko Kontio talks about the organization.
One of our principal areas of endeavor is to maintain a temperate society. We discourage excessive drinking and try to carry the message outside. We are also committed to carry on the ethnic customs and the language to those who are not familiar with it and future generations.
One of Kaleva's important educational functions has always been the Finnish language school.
We have 3 classes, the beginners, the intermediate, and the advanced. And as I think we have now had over 1,200 students up to date go through these classes. People that have a Finnish background and others that don't. And any of you knowing the Finnish language knows how hard it is to pronounce the Y, U, and the A and the O with a dots on the A and Ö. We have had Italians, we have had black people, teachers, nurses, and all kinds of college students. And I think that they have all enjoyed it, especially the last night, which is called a graduation night, and each class puts on a little skit and shows off just how much they've learned.
All immigrant groups look to the church as a provider of spiritual and cultural support. This also held true for many Finnish immigrants. Eili Walsh describes the history of Fitchburg's 5 Finnish churches.
Reverend Andrew Group came to Fitchburg in November 1887, and the local Finnish Congregational Church began its services in 1892. At the time, Reverend Group served in the Swedish Congregational Church, but at the request of the Massachusetts Congregational Home Mission, he began to work among the Finnish population. The Finnish Congregational Church was organized in 1895, and the Elm Street building dedicated in January 1905.
Pastor Group served first the Swedish church here, and then he was asked to take the Finnish church. By the way, he learned Finnish here in this country. Swedish was the language in Finland. He was born in that area in Finland where they speak Swedish. And his wife was Sweden, and she learned Finnish also in the United States. And he served the church over 50 years. And he was a well-respected man. I remember his funeral. The church was packed full, and there were lots of people outside. They listened over the loudspeaker. The business places were closed for half an hour, and the police was guiding the traffic in each street corner when we went to the cemetery. The whole city respected that man. He did.
Since Reverend Group, several fine pastors have served the congregation. Today, Reverend Worty is the pastor of the church. The Lutheran Messiah Church was organized in October 1893 and incorporated as the Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Society of Fitchburg. The first building on Mechanic Street was dedicated on November 18, 1900. Reverend Nisila was pastor at the time. In October 1953, in recognition of changes in the church membership, the congregation adopted a new name, the Messiah Lutheran Church. On Christmas Eve 1961, the church building was destroyed by a devastating fire. Soon after, the congregation relocated to its present site on Ringe Road. The beautiful new house of worship was dedicated in November 1963. Since the time of Pastor Nisila, many other dedicated pastors have served the congregation. The Reverend Raymond Aho is presently serving the congregation. In addition to the two major Finnish churches, 3 others were active in Fitchburg: the Apostolic Lutheran Church on Rollstone Street, the Finnish Pentecostal Church on Elm Street, and St. Paul's Suomi Synod Church on Mechanic Street.
For over 100 years, Finnish Americans have made important contributions to the life of the Fitchburg community. They are well integrated into the fabric of modern American society. Descendants of the early Finnish immigrants, like those of other ethnic groups, today run businesses, teach, and engage in a wide variety of professions. Some have even continued to work on the farms of their fathers. Fitchburg Finnish Americans are proud of their heritage and seek to preserve it and to stimulate its growth. Signy Sipilä, a founder of the Finnish Cultural Center, explains.
I was interested in the Finnish Cultural Center at the very beginning and would like to tell you a little bit about its history. It was on January 16, 1964, that 17 dedicated and optimistic people gathered at Fitchburg State to hear President James Hammond outline his plans for a Finnish Cultural Center. As representatives of all the Finnish churches and organizations in the city, they were keenly interested that the Rauha Väyrynen Memorial Collection was to become the nucleus of a library in both the Finnish and English languages. Rauha, of course, was the former registrar of the college. From the beginning, the idea of a Finnish memorial library aroused excitement both here and abroad. Gifts were received from the administrative offices of Helsinki, Tampere, Kuopio, Riihimäki, and Oulu University, as well as from many individuals in this area. 10 years later, when the beautiful new college library was built and a Finland room was included in the plans, a long-standing goal was realized, and the books finally had a permanent home. All through the years, the cultural bond between Finland and Fitchburg State has been cemented not only by the exchange of books, but also by the presentation of many concerts, plays, folk dances, and speakers who came from Finland. The collection has grown to approximately 2,000 volumes, and the membership has increased from the original 17 to well over 200. An interesting highlight of the activities was the 3-day Finnish Cultural Fair, which attracted craftsmen and guests from a wide area. There has also been participation in many community endeavors, including a reception to President Kekkonen. The Finnish Cultural Center of the Fitchburg State College has encouraged in every possible way all local projects which foster good relations between our country and Finland and help to preserve and advance the Finnish culture and language. For this reason, contributions have been made to the Finnish newspaper Raivaja, and aid in the form of scholarships has been given to the students at the Finnish language course, so successfully carried on by the Kaleva Society. The story of the center continues as new ideas and new projects present themselves. Now a committee is working to broaden the scope of the library and make it a true repository of material that will preserve the story of the immigrants who came to this area and thus enhance for future generations the value of their inheritance.